Welcome to Breaking Frontiers.
There's something profoundly true about the idea that if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. It's not just a cliche, it's a fundamental principle of how the world responds to you. People are constantly looking for signals, for indications of who you are, what you stand for, and whether or not you're capable of handling the weight of responsibility. And the reality is, if you approach the world with hesitation, with uncertainty, with a lack of conviction in your own worth, then you will be treated accordingly. But if you stand firm, if you carry yourself with belief, real, deep, unshakable belief, then that belief begins to shape everything around you. See, every single person who has ever accomplished anything meaningful had to first fight through doubt, both their own and the doubt of others. That's the nature of progress. When you decide to pursue something worthwhile, resistance appears, often in the form of voices telling you that you're not good enough, that you'll never make it, that you should quit before you even begin. And the worst part? Sometimes that voice comes from inside your own head. It whispers to you at night. It creeps in when you're exhausted, when you've faced rejection, when you're standing at the edge of failure. That voice tells you to give up. And if you listen to it, if you give in, then you become the very thing you feared. Someone who never lived up to their potential. But here's where the transformation happens. The moment you recognize that self-doubt is just another challenge to overcome, just another test of your will, you begin to shift your mindset. Instead of crumbling under the weight of insecurity, you learn to confront it. You remind yourself that no one who ever built something great had absolute certainty at the beginning. They started exactly where you are, unsure, unproven, full of question, and yet they moved forward. They took action. They built confidence through effort, through persistence, through the willingness to keep pushing forward even when there was no immediate evidence of success. That's the thing about belief. It's not something that comes from the outside. It's not granted to you by other people. It's forged in the fire of struggle, in the repetition of showing up every single day, despite the doubts, despite the setbacks. When you commit yourself fully, when you step forward without needing permission from the world, you start to send a different kind of signal. You walk into a room differently. You speak with more authority. Your presence commands attention, not because you're forcing it, but because you carry yourself as someone who knows where they're going. And when you do that, something remarkable happens. People begin to believe in you too. But it has to start with you. No one else can do that part for you. And the reason why so many people struggle is because they're waiting for someone to tell them they're good enough, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for a sign that guarantees success before they even take the first step. But that's not how life works. There is no perfect moment. There is no absolute certainty. And if you wait for those things, you will wait forever. Instead, you have to move forward despite the uncertainty. You have to trust that if you keep pushing, if you keep learning, if you refuse to let failure define you, then eventually you will become the person who was capable all along. The version of you that is strong, resilient, and unstoppable is already there. It just needs to be uncovered. And that's why belief is so powerful. It's not some abstract, mystical idea. It's the force that determines whether you rise or fall, whether you break through barriers or surrender to them. It is the foundation of every success story, because if you don't believe in yourself, then why would anyone else? Why would the world open its doors to someone who doubts their own right to be there? You have to claim your place. You have to walk forward as if you belong, because you do. And when you commit to that, when you refuse to let fear dictate your actions, when you embrace the responsibility of your own potential, you become someone unstoppable. That's what separates those who make an impact from those who fade into the background. That's what turns dreams into reality. That's what transforms a person from someone who merely exists into someone who truly lives. The way you think determines the way you live. That's not just some motivational phrase. It's a psychological reality. The way you frame the world, the way you interpret obstacles, the way you define yourself internally dictates every action you take externally. And the problem most people face isn't that they lack talent or opportunity or even resources. It's that their mindset is fundamentally working against them. They've trained themselves, often unconsciously, to see limitations instead of possibilities, to focus on why things won't work instead of why they might, to expect failure before they've even given success a chance. And when you live like that, what do you think happens? You prove yourself right, because your brain, in all its complexity, is designed to filter reality in accordance with your beliefs. If you tell yourself you're not good enough, you will find endless evidence to support that conclusion. You'll remember every mistake you've made, every time you've been rejected, every instance where things didn't go your way, and you'll use that as proof that you should just give up, that maybe success was never meant for you in the first place. But here's the thing, if you trained yourself to think that way, you can train yourself to think differently. That's what separates people who achieve something meaningful from those who don't. It's not that they're free from doubt or fear or failure, it's that they've conditioned themselves to push forward despite those things. They don't entertain the thought that they might not be capable because they've already decided that they are. They act as though success is inevitable, not because they're arrogant, but because they understand something crucial. The mind follows the body, and the body follows the mind. If you move as though you're already the person you want to become, your mind begins to align with that reality. You start making decisions from a place of strength instead of insecurity, from confidence instead of fear. And when you do that long enough, something remarkable happens. Your external world begins to shift in response. Because think about it. How often do people sabotage themselves simply by the way they think? How many brilliant ideas have never been pursued because the person who had them decided before they even tried that they would fail? How many opportunities have been lost because someone was too afraid to take a risk? The truth is, success doesn't belong to the most talented or the most intelligent. It belongs to those who have conditioned their minds to see challenges as opportunities rather than threats. It belongs to those who have trained themselves to focus on solutions instead of problems. And the training never stops. That's what people don't realize. They assume confidence is something you either have or you don't, as if some people are just born with an unshakable belief in themselves. But that's not true. Confidence is built. Success is cultivated. It's a process, and it requires work. It requires taking control of your thoughts the same way an athlete takes control of their body. It requires discipline. And discipline, contrary to what many believe, isn't about suffering or restriction. It's about freedom. Because when you master your mind, when you no longer allow fear to dictate your choices, you become unstoppable. Most people don't reach their potential because they refuse to take responsibility for their own mindset. They assume their thoughts are just happening to them, that they have no control over how they think or feel. But that's an illusion. You have a choice in every moment to feed the thoughts that push you forward or the ones that hold you back, to train yourself to look for possibilities, to see yourself as someone who is capable, worthy, and ready to take on whatever life throws at you. And the moment you take responsibility for that, everything changes. This is why those who succeed carry themselves differently. They speak differently. They move through the world with an energy that commands respect. Not because they demand it, but because they embody it. They don't need validation because they've already validated themselves. And something you can develop, but it takes work. It takes catching yourself in the middle of a negative thought and refusing to let it take hold. It takes standing up when you feel like collapsing. It takes pushing forward when every fiber of your being is telling you to quit. And you will want to quit. That's the reality of progress. Your mind will resist change because change is uncomfortable. But the more you push through that resistance, the stronger you become. The more you rewire your thinking, the more naturally success-oriented thoughts will replace the old, limiting ones. And soon, what once felt impossible becomes your new standard. What once seemed like a distant dream becomes your reality. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't is rarely talent. It's rarely intelligence. It's rarely some innate ability that only a chosen few possess. More often than not, the real difference, the thing that separates the extraordinary from the average, is consistency. Not bursts of motivation, not moments of inspiration, but the quiet, disciplined act of showing up day after day, regardless of how you feel, regardless of whether or not the world is watching, regardless of whether or not success seems within reach. And that's what people struggle with. Because everyone wants transformation, but few are willing to commit to the process required to achieve it. People get excited about change, about self-improvement, about becoming stronger, more capable versions of themselves. But that excitement fades. They start something new, they put in effort for a week, maybe even a month, but then they get tired, they get distracted. They convince themselves that because the results aren't immediate, they're wasting their time. And so they quit. And what happens when you quit? You reinforce the belief that you're someone who quits. You condition yourself to expect failure, to give up the moment things get difficult. And that cycle, starting, stopping, destroys any hope of real transformation. Because transformation isn't a single event. It's not some moment of epiphany where everything suddenly changes. It's a slow, painful, disciplined process of daily improvement where you lay down brick after brick after brick until eventually you've built something indestructible. And the only way to get there is through consistency, through showing up even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel it. Because it's in those moments when your mind is telling you to stop, when you don't see progress, when no one else is watching, that your character is being forged. And that's what most people don't understand. They assume that motivation is the key to success, that if they just felt inspired all the time, they'd follow through. But motivation is unreliable. It fluctuates. It's easy to feel motivated when things are exciting, when progress is obvious, when you're in the honeymoon phase of a new goal. But what about the days when you wake up and feel exhausted, when nothing seems to be working, when doubt creeps in and whispers that maybe this isn't worth it? That's when consistency separates the successful from the unsuccessful. Because the ones who win are the ones who push forward despite those feelings. They don't wait to feel ready. They don't wait for inspiration. They do what needs to be done, whether they want to or not. That's discipline. That's what real success demands. And it's not glamorous, it's not exciting, it's boring, it's repetitive. It's doing the same thing over and over again, refining, improving, adjusting, but never stopping. It's writing when you don't feel like writing, training when you don't feel like training, working when you don't feel like working. That's what builds resilience. That's what transforms a person. Not talent, not luck, but the ability to stay the course when most people fall away. And here's the truth. Most people won't stay the course. They'll start and stop. They'll jump from one thing to another, chasing shortcuts, looking for easy ways out, searching for the secret formula that doesn't exist. And they'll never build anything substantial because they never gave themselves the chance to. But you don't have to be like that. You can be the exception. You can decide right now that you will commit to the long haul, that you will embrace the process, that you will keep moving forward, even when progress is invisible, even when everything in you is screaming to quit. Because the ones who refuse to quit are the ones who succeed. Not because they're the most talented, not because they had the best circumstances, but because they simply refused to stop. They showed up when others didn't. They pushed forward when others gave in. And over time, that effort compounded, that consistency turned into transformation. And that transformation turned into the kind of success that people look at and say, how did they do it? They did it by showing up, by committing, by understanding that success isn't about massive leaps, it's about small steps, repeated over and over again until they become unstoppable. And you can do the same. If you want real change, if you want real transformation, then forget about motivation. Forget about waiting for the right moment. Just start and don't stop. No matter who you are, no matter what you pursue, one thing is certain. You will encounter obstacles. You will face resistance. You will be knocked down. And if you're not prepared for that, if you haven't developed the mindset to handle adversity, you'll break. You'll let those setbacks define you, convince you that you're incapable, that maybe this dream of yours was never meant to be. But that's not the truth. The truth is, obstacles are not roadblocks, they are tests. They exist to see if you are truly committed, to separate those who are serious from those who are merely interested. And most people fail those tests. They start with ambition, with energy, with excitement, and the moment things get difficult, they shrink back. They take failure as a sign to stop instead of a sign to grow. They tell themselves that maybe they weren't good enough after all. But what they don't realize is that setbacks are not proof of inadequacy, they're proof of progress. Because the only people who never fail are the ones who never try. The only people who never face obstacles are the ones who stay exactly where they are, afraid to push beyond their comfort zone. And that's the real tragedy. It's not failure, it's not rejection, it's not falling short. It's staying in the same place because you were too afraid to push through the struggle. That's what destroys potential. That's what keeps people trapped in mediocrity. Not that they weren't capable, but that they convinced themselves they weren't capable before they even had a chance to prove otherwise. See, when you hit an obstacle, you have two choices. You can let it stop you, let it wear you down, let it convince you that maybe this was all a mistake, or you can use it. You can look at every challenge as an opportunity to become stronger, more disciplined, more resilient. You can refuse to see difficulty as a reason to quit and instead see it as the very thing that will forge you into the person you need to become. Because that's what struggle does. It forces you to grow. When you encounter resistance, when you fail, when you fall flat on your face, you have a chance to learn something. You have a chance to get better. And if you approach obstacles with that mindset, suddenly they stop being something to fear. They stop being something to avoid. Instead, they become part of the process. They become necessary. Because without them, without the struggle, you don't develop the strength required to succeed. Because people don't like to hear that. They want to believe that success should be smooth, that things should work out the first time, that if they encounter too much difficulty, it must mean they're on the wrong path. But that's nonsense. The path of least resistance leads nowhere worth going. If something is difficult, if it challenges you, if it makes you question yourself, then chances are you're doing something meaningful. That's how you know you're moving in the right direction, because it isn't easy. Think about the people you admire, the ones who have truly achieved something remarkable. Do you think they got there without setbacks, without failure, without moments where everything seemed to be falling apart? Of course not. They got there because they endured. They got there because when things got hard, they didn't retreat, they advanced. They used failure as fuel. They took rejection as redirection. They didn't see obstacles as the end of the road. They saw them as a chance to rise. And you can do the same. The moment you stop running from adversity, the moment you stop seeing struggle as an enemy and start seeing it as an ally, your entire life changes. Because now, nothing can break you. Now, instead of being derailed by obstacles, you absorb them, you learn from them, you grow through them. And when you do that, you become unstoppable. Because what can stop a person who refuses to quit? What can stand in the way of someone who sees every setback as an opportunity to become stronger? That's the mindset you need to develop. That's the attitude that will carry you through. Because setbacks are inevitable, but defeat is a choice. And the only way you truly fail is if you decide to stay down. But if you get back up, if you keep moving forward, if you refuse to let challenges define you, then you will become the kind of person who is not just capable of success, but destined for it. The people around you shape you in ways you don't even realize. Their attitudes, their habits, their beliefs, these things are contagious. They seep into your mind, whether you want them to or not. If you spend enough time around someone who is lazy, who makes excuses, who constantly complains about why life is unfair, it won't be long before you start thinking the same way. Not because you consciously choose to, but because that's how human beings work. We mirror the people we surround ourselves with. And that's why this matters. That's why you need to be ruthless about the influences you allow into your life. Because if you surround yourself with people who settle for mediocrity, then mediocrity will become your standard. If you surround yourself with people who never take responsibility for their actions, who always blame someone else, then sooner or later, you'll start adopting that mindset too. And once you fall into that pattern, it's hard to escape, because now you've built an identity around it. You've convinced yourself that your failures aren't your fault, that you're powerless to change, that success is something that happens to other people. And that's a dangerous place to be. But the opposite is also true. If you surround yourself with people who are disciplined, who are ambitious, who demand more from themselves every single day, then that standard becomes your standard. If you spend time with people who hold themselves accountable, who refuse to make excuses, who are constantly striving for more, then you start to adopt those traits as well. You start to think differently. You start to expect more from yourself. You start to move through the world with a different energy because now you're being influenced by something greater. And this isn't just about the people you know personally. It's about everything you expose yourself to, the books you read, the content you consume, the voices you listen to, because those things shape you just as much as the people around you do. If you fill your mind with negativity, with distractions, with empty entertainment that numbs your ambition, then you're sabotaging yourself without even realizing it. But if you make a conscious effort to seek out wisdom, to learn from those who have accomplished what you hope to accomplish, to surround yourself physically or virtually with people who elevate you, then you will start to rise. And that's the key. You have to be intentional. You have to choose who and what influences you, because if you don't, the world will choose for you. And the world doesn't care about your success. The world will drown you in mediocrity, in distractions, in meaningless pursuits that keep you from ever realizing your potential. But if you're not careful, you'll look up one day and realize you've spent years in an environment that kept you small, that kept you weak, that conditioned you to believe you were incapable of more, and by the time you recognize it, you'll have wasted precious time. So take control now. Look at the people in your life and ask yourself, are they pushing you forward or are they holding you back? Are they challenging you to be better or are they making it easier for you to stay the same? Are they encouraging your growth or are they feeding your excuses? Because if you want to transform, if you want to become something more than you are now, then you cannot afford to let the wrong influences dictate your future. And yes, this will be difficult. It will require making hard choices. You may have to distance yourself from people you care about, not because you don't love them, but because you can't afford to let them pull you in the wrong direction. You may have to change your environment, cut out habits that feel comfortable but are ultimately destructive, rewire the way you engage with the world, and that's painful. But what's more painful is staying in a place that suffocates your potential. Because at the end of the day, you are either growing or you are decaying. There is no standing still. And the people around you, the influences you allow into your life will determine which direction you go. So choose wisely. Choose people who inspire you. Choose influences that challenge you. Choose an environment that forces you to rise. Because when you do that, when you surround yourself with the right energy, you will become the kind of person who doesn't just succeed. You will become the kind of person who is truly unstoppable. You can plan, you can prepare, you can gather all the knowledge in the world, but none of it matters if you don't act. Too many people get stuck in a cycle of overthinking, waiting for the perfect moment, convincing themselves they need just a little more time before they start. And what happens? Nothing. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and before they know it, years have passed. And they're still in the same place, still making the same excuses, still waiting for the stars to align before they take that first step. But there is no perfect moment. There is no ideal time when everything will suddenly fall into place. The only way forward is through action, not once, not occasionally, but relentlessly, day after day, pushing forward, making mistakes, learning, adjusting, and pushing forward again. It's uncomfortable, it's messy, it's filled with uncertainty. But that's what separates the people who achieve something from the ones who only dream about it. You don't need more time. You don't need more certainty. You need to move. And when you do, when you stop hesitating and start executing, momentum builds. You develop confidence not by thinking about what you could do, but by proving to yourself through action that you are capable. And once you prove that, nothing can stop you, because the world doesn't reward potential. It rewards those who step up, who take risks, who refuse to sit on the sidelines. So, don't wait. Don't hesitate. Take action now. And keep taking action until the life you want is no longer a possibility, but a reality. Everything comes down to a simple truth. You are either moving forward or you are staying the same. And staying the same is never truly neutral. It's falling behind. The difference between those who rise and those who remain stuck isn't luck, talent, or circumstances. It's belief. It's mindset. It's consistency. It's the ability to push through obstacles, to surround yourself with the right influences, and most importantly, to take relentless action no matter how difficult the path becomes. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to hand you the life you want. The only way to achieve it is to decide right now that you are capable, that you are worthy, that you will no longer allow fear, doubt, or comfort to dictate your future, because the only person who can change your life is you. And when you truly commit to that, when you refuse to quit, when you embrace the struggle and push forward despite it, nothing will be able to stop you. The choice is yours. It always has been.